Hello, everybody. I know what you're thinking. It's been too long. It has been too long. I missed you guys, and I hope you missed me. We have a great state of medtech live today. I'm going to bring on a good friend of mine, my brother from another industry mother, Frank Dolan, who's CEO and founder of Arsenal Advisors. Frank is somebody who used to put on this fantastic event pre-pandemic, of course, over at Stanford and Harvard. I was fortunate enough to be invited on as a speaker, and then one year I got to be the host of the co-host of the event. Frank is a really well known and respected thought leader in the biotech industry, somebody who I've grown very close to over the years. And so I wanted to bring him on because, as we know, with the changes in the market, sales and marketing has changed quite dramatically. And so as a result of it, um, we're having to sell and market to our customers in a very different way. And so I wanted to bring Frank on as somebody who's, at least in my eyes, I see as the voice of biotech, somebody who has a finger on the pulse of the industry. So let me bring him on to the stream. Frank Dolan, are you there? Is that a good introduction or what?
It's fantastic. Yeah, the Venmo is coming your way now. So,
All right, awesome. Yes, looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. Well, Frank, before we get into it, maybe you can give a little bit of background about yourself and Arsenal Advisors to everybody before we jump in. I know we have a lot of really interesting topics and some great data to share. But why don't you give us a little background on yourself and Arsenal Advisors?
sure. Well, my basically track record. I came out of college and fell into a pharma sales job, and add a little over 20 years, and hopping around a bunch of different roles throughout the commercial side of the business, mostly sales, marketing, leadership type of stuff. Um, Worked for 7 different biotech companies along the way. 3 of them were first time commercials. So, like, literally building the commercial functions. What should the policies, the people, the process kind of like look like? And that was really, really cool. So I get an opinion on how to do things right. I had the pain of learning how we did them wrong from time to time. And then not quite the same 3 companies were bought out along the way by big pharma. So I started a company by accident about 4 years ago. Did not necessarily expect to do that, but as someone who, much like yourself, Omar, I love speaking. I love writing for industry, shaping and sharing best practices. I was taking a break from that career pace. I hosted this think tank here in Boston with 35 of my closest biopharma friends, and we were talking about like real issues, not going to a conference with my watered down slides from legal and regulatory. Love those people. But yeah, you can't really get into it at these big conferences, but really ideate and find ways to share real information, real insights. And I thought that maybe I could make a bigger impact beyond my company and on the industry by shaping, sharing best practices, creating experiences, distributing content that would help everybody be better. And part of that passion of breaking down these barriers and liberating ideas across my peer group included trying to be inclusive of the med tech and med device world. And I think that's where we kind of like first put our heads together. It's like, how do we get these industries that have so much in common to talk to each other and realize like our skill sets and experiences are easily transferable for the most part. And that, I think is really in contrast to anyone who's been in one of those industries and try to cross over jobs to the other. It feels like you hit the fraternal wall of resistance. Like, I'm not really sure you understand how we do it here. So yeah, you're an awesome marketer. Yeah, you're an awesome salesperson in pharma, but in med tech, different world. Sorry. So anyway, that's kind of like what I'm up to and what we're up to. And I'm just so excited to be here with you today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sorry for looking down. So I see A lot of people have joined. Thank you all for joining. Qasim Butt, MD, one of my favorite nephrologists, Ashley Bolins, big fan of Ashley. And for those of you who are just joining, again, whether it's YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook, drop in the comments. I want to hear where you guys are joining from. What city? I always love to see what city. We've been getting a lot of people from Australia, lately Germany. So drop what city you're in. I'll give you a shout out. And of course, as Frank and I go into this discussion of the state of sales in medtech and biotech, if you have a question, you have a great comment, drop it in there. I will highlight it. And look, we're putting on a lot of we're putting a lot of energy and entertaining you guys. So the least that you can do is just take your finger and tap that those emojis down there, because we do like to see them, and it helps this show get seen by other people. So do a little work, throw little emojis up every now and then. I see some people throwing it down. I appreciate it. I love those emojis. But that being said, so again, okay, Ashley out of Marina Del Rey, Mazen Khatib out of San Diego, fantastic. I know Qasim's down in Texas, the great state of Texas. And Frank, you're joining us from Boston, right?
I am.
Yeah, and Boston's become has really exploded just in the last 5 years as a hub for biotech and medtech. But let's get into the topic, which is a state of sales in medtech and biotech. I know you mentioned that you have some data. So why don't we go over that data that you wanted to share, and let's use that as a jumping off point to talk about this a rather interesting topic.
Yeah. So, as you might imagine, I try to keep on top of a lot of the research that's coming out from a lot of different great firms, both from the different companies in life science, as well as all of the solution providers, vendors, and consultants that really support the industry. And I think sometimes with the packaging of the data, some things are missed when we get information back on, for example, how HCPs are allowing access to sales representatives. Sometimes it's packaged like, here's the problem for pharma. HCPs are only interested in these things from sales reps. Well, when these surveys are done, and I've done tons of market research over my career, I feel like when I read these studies, I look deeply into the questions. The docs are agnostic to whether it's a device person, a DME salesperson, or pharma. So it's not necessarily pharma specific. So I think this is fodder for conversation today. I was looking at some data, and I'd love your audience to weigh in on this as well as you, Omar. But with COVID, we know that rep access to physicians changed dramatically in both quantity and format. So in the early days of the pandemic, we went heavy virtual, but it seems like everyone's really interested in understanding not only their own data, but really we want to know what everyone else is up to. Like, are these details coming back, both in the quantity, face-to-face, virtual? Like, how is it coming back? How do we compare? And I took a look at some data that came from a company called IQVIA, and they just put out this report yesterday. And when they take a look at 2021 for the year, details, a total number of details with HCPs, it's 81% of what it was kind of like baseline. So right before the pandemic hit, we dipped way down. We were at a third of the details we were having with physicians during the early days of the pandemic. But for 2021, as access changed and people got comfortable and reacclimated to things, the total details are back up to 81% of what it was before that stuff happened. But what I think is really interesting is that while that's total details, it's made up of face-to-face and virtual. And virtual is still almost half.
Can you define, when you say details, can you be more specific for the audience?
A promotional encounter with a healthcare professional.
Got it. So that could be in person, digitally, at a conference.
Yeah.
So anything that's promotional, sales and marketing combined.
Yeah. I mean, so for someone outside of our industry, they might call it just a sales call. So the total quantity of sales calls, however they come up, whether it's via Zoom, whether it's face-to-face, we're only at 81% of the total number of calls that we were having in a given time period versus the pre-pandemic phases when you take a look at what happened in 2021. And
got it.
So the total number of promotional interactions are down.
So it's down by 19%, essentially, is what
down
you're saying,
by 19%.
Right? Almost a quarter.
Yeah.
Got it.
But also pre-pandemic, most of those sales calls, that baseline, were face-to-face. There were very few virtual. But now almost half of our sales calls our details, our promotional interactions with HCPs. Almost half of them are virtual right now, based on what we're counting. And I think that's interesting for a lot of reasons. Number one is we're not bouncing right back. Number two is in a lot of the market research, we have several different HCPs, and this is broken out by primary care, specialty, surgeons, all sorts of different call points, whether they're surgical centers, whether they're hospitals, whether they're primary care clinics, whatever. Like when you break it all down, you mix it together. There's a huge trend. Like these HCPs are like, I actually like the idea of having a fair number of my promotional interactions with a salesperson virtually. And in the pharma world, at least, this is my opinion, I can't speak for medtech. I've heard, I've seen, I've found that if there were institutions that were looking for a reason to restrict sales rec access, as far as face-to-face being on-site, on-prem, COVID was the ultimate accelerant to enforce those policies. So if you're an administrator and you've got a bunch of healthcare professionals, MDs, surgeons, nurses, whatever, and you're like, I really wish I could just get them to focus on patient care and not interacting with these salespeople, those administrators have basically gotten the leverage that they've wanted, and they're trying to enforce these policies. So I think for our salespeople, which I think are critical and the ultimate catalyst to a sale, they create incredible, just generate amazing value. Especially the amazing ones are just like, you can't replace that with anything. Like amazing salespeople just crush it, no matter what territory, what brand. They always do amazing things. I get concerned on how will these folks build a relationship, in a virtual world where you can't see people face to face. How will real value be created? How do you differentiate that customer experience depending on your comfort and how you leverage technology? And another thing that I thought, I've got more stats to kind of go through, but kind of pausing on that with this last thought would be is what an opportunity in this world where we're going to stay virtual to some significant degree for salespeople to have a better kind of owned versus rented presence online with their healthcare provider community. So for example, like on LinkedIn, I'm sometimes surprised when I have people connect with me that are in a sales role in pharma. That's where most of my audience has been. And they've got like 380 connections. And I'm just thinking, even if you just connect with your HCPs, you're building a relationship. They're going to have, you're going to learn more about them. They're going to learn more about you. It doesn't have to be promotional in any way. Like I've spent my entire career closely partnered with compliance. People can do things wrong on social media associated with their company and their brand. That does happen from time to time, but those people are pretty much brain dead and have no filter if they're doing those things, because it's so easy just to have a wholesome professional networking relationship and start to ring fence your physician audience, your HCP audience by your social footprint, because you're one tab away doing your electronic sales call over Zoom with the doc, with them zipping over to LinkedIn and seeing more about your profile or connecting with you more. So anyways, I went a little bit of a rant. So give me your
No, that's what this show is all about. And Frank, if you don't mind, I'm going to see how it looks, because this, at least on our live stream, because of our rectangle layout, like we're not taking up much real estate. I'm going to just quickly see, is this okay? Yeah. Are we okay with this?
It's great.
We take up more real estate.
Sounds good.
There we go. I just want both of our fantastic faces to show up, and take up as much real estate as possible on the newsfeed. No, so I think you bring a lot of good points. So you're absolutely right that this was something that. See, look, I expanded it. I already see the viewer numbers go up. I welcome everybody who just joined. I think what's interesting is you're absolutely right that this trend was already happening of hospitals limiting access, and COVID really accelerated. And it's not just the administrators who wanted this because they want their clinicians to focus. If you talk to the purchasing department, purchasing department, procurement, they really hate salespeople because they're like, hey, like, don't come in here and get our doctors excited about technology because then it's more work for us. So you can have, a lot of physicians. I mean, look, I'll speak anecdotally from the surgeons that I know. They look to conferences because they look to industry to learn about the latest technology, what's new, etc. Right. And so they're not traveling as much to conferences because I think it's still happening now. It definitely happened last year where if you go to a conference, you're employed by a hospital, the hospital has you quarantined for 2 weeks. I think they still do it, in which case you're not getting paid. So right now, the only opportunity for physicians to learn about new technologies are online and digitally, right? And so because of that, there's a big shift in terms of how we sell and market. And I think more importantly, this is a lot more efficient. I'm going to be on a panel called Upending the Sales Model at LSI 2022 in Dana Point in a couple of weeks. It's like one of the best medtech investor conferences in the world. And the model is that one of the thesis of the panelists is that there's going to be less, if not no more salespeople in 5 years. I don't think there'll be no salespeople, but it's going to be dramatically reduced. Look, Pfizer, who did what, 80 billion in revenue last year, had a massive layoff, right? Yeah. Because they said our customers want digital interactions. I know that you know a little bit more about it, so maybe you can speak a little bit more to it. Oh, yeah. I see Ashley Boland says handsome faces. Thanks, Ashley. I appreciate that. I'm brown, so I don't blush, but Frank might blush, but I appreciate we appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. By all means, to the audience, any chance you guys get to compliment me and our guests, don't hold back. Don't hold back at all.
That's so funny.
Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, so the Pfizer thing is interesting. When you consider all of the life science organizations out there and how they were impacted by COVID, Pfizer, arguably just really came out of it so much stronger, like orders of magnitude stronger. A lot of companies, a lot of industries suffered. A lot of companies in medical device. I know I've got friends in the dental market, and they really struggled with access and launches and revenue, all that sort of jazz. But Pfizer, war chest, billions of additional cash on hand, already one of the biggest companies in the life science industry, full stop. And yet, with all of that cash, and I say that as someone who's run commercial before, and you think about cash on hand and what can I do? How long can we go? Perhaps losing money to get to a place where we gain more money. They have the ability to burn cash to make their way to the other side of a marketplace, like when all of these sales interactions really come back face to face. Yet they said, to the tune of over 500 people, thank you for being a part of Pfizer and selling for us. However, your presence is no longer needed. We will be hiring back some people, but in a different type of sales role that's digital first. And for some reason, the first take here is that those people didn't necessarily have the competencies needed to be a digital first sales rep. And so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm not here to speak for Pfizer. I'm not a proxy for them in any particular way. But I just feel like, what does that tell the rest of us when it comes to, if we're in a sales or marketing role, if we're customer facing, what skills do we need to have to be effective in our role, knowing that we are going to operate in a digital first virtual world, or at least a dominant world, for sure. If all of your magic is face to face as a salesperson, that's awesome. But I think you may want to say, like, how do I become amazing virtually through this type of medium to be able to get the sale and do that? And by the way, we've got to get all of our peers on board as well, because if as a sales force, we're not effective in this digital first world we're coming into, this heavy virtual sales interaction piece. I mean, the sales force will be judged. And then you have executives that are like, all right, well, maybe I'll get rid of 500 of my reps and kind of do what Pfizer did.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the big thing is that the landscape. So I'll speak on the side of like just like med device. The landscape is changing, and when new funding vehicles come into play, that usually changes things. It's kind of like if you really want to understand like what's going to happen in politics or marketplaces, like just follow the money. At the end of the day, the banks control and influence everything. And in our industry, those would technically be investors and venture capitalists. And so you look at and I keep referring back to this, that Larry Ellison of Oracle acquires their biggest acquisition in history was acquiring Cerner for $28 billion, right? So everyone's starting to move into healthcare, right? Which is going to bring a different type of investor, that's going to bring different type of boards, different type of leadership. And the first thing they're going to look at is, like, you see it in the SaaS model, which is, why do we have this many salespeople that are physically prospecting and doing all, like, that's not efficient, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, it costs a lot of money. And then number three, let's say you have an all-star salesperson, right? How do you replicate that? So like on the side of capital equipment selling, let's say robotic systems, how do you replicate that if you have no way to see what are the conversations they're having, what are they doing, et cetera, versus doing it online digitally, let's just say through social media and through online demos? You at least have data points where, like, okay, well, we have anecdotally and let's say manually, we can pull and say, this is what this person did. So if they left the organization or something happens, you're like, we can at least replicate that. Nowadays, like at a capital equipment company, like you have a top performing salesperson and they decide to leave. That's a huge gap, because it's not only filling that, but it's also getting the new person up to speed. I mean, you might be done in that market for like 3 to 6 months, if not longer, if you don't hire the right person fast enough and they get them up to speed. So I think this old way needs to change. And the thing that people mistake me, I've gotten some heat because people think that I'm saying that medical salespeople, like the traditional ones, are going to be gone. They're not going to be gone. If anything, like, believe it or not, the people who I think are poised to do the best in this new way of selling digitally are the reps, the sales professionals who have been doing this for like more than 20 years, like who have been in it long enough that they remember back in the day where it was like very relationship based. It still is, right? It's only taking that online and doing it online. And I think that the more seasoned salespeople can do better, because they're at least a lot more patient. They're not going to be like spamming doctors, I think,
Yeah.
So it just depends, but it's a democratizing event, because you can be a salesperson who's maybe doesn't have those relationships. Let's say you're starting a career, you don't have those relationships, etc. But now it's just gone digital. Everybody's on an equal playing field. So to those people who have like 200 followers, like, and it's not, I think it goes beyond just followers too, because that's like your book of business as a salesperson. If you want to, like, I tell VCs all the time right now, like, look, if you're trying to guide your founders on who to hire as a salesperson, go look at their LinkedIn and see who they're connected to. Like, then you can tell, like, do they actually have that network or not?
Yeah. I mean, if you're a salesperson, the way I look at it, and the way I try to manage my career is that, I'm the franchise. So, I mean, the companies come and go. I've worked for organizations where, I was sold, other people were sold on the future, the dream. This is going to build, we're going to grow. There's going to be promotions. There's going to be stock, that goes through the roof and yada, yada, yada. Like, and then like disaster occurs. And I've been caught in one downsizing, and we would never want anyone to have to kind of go through that, but it makes you realize, like, the companies will change, the brands will change. If you're a salesperson in a specific geography and that's where you want to like live and really work, I mean, those career salespeople, there's a lot of them in biopharma, and I respect them greatly. That, like, hey, they don't want to move to the HQ in Boston and San Diego and LA, whatever. That's great. So they're going to be in Omaha. Well, like, own your market. And if you're the franchise, I think that especially on the appropriate, social media channels, for example, like LinkedIn, I'm not here to necessarily promote LinkedIn, but it's a relevant platform where there's a lot of activity, and the professional interchange is very natural. Like, why wouldn't you build that connection and that following, and it's portable with you? Because otherwise you're just renting, your presence and your relationship with those healthcare professionals. So if you don't have, the company car or XYZ, med tech or biopharma company's product to go ahead and sell, like there's no relationship with those customers. Well, you want to be able to take that with you. And I feel like you don't have to use these social channels to necessarily pitch your product. But in my opinion, it's a fast track to building relationships. And really, to one of your earlier points, Omar, it's like, how do you, when you lose that all-star rep and then you're trying to like put someone in new, like in this, if you end up in Boston, for example, everybody knows Boston access is terrible. There's so much life science industry here, yet it's the most unfriendly to med tech, med device, and pharma from a salesperson walking into an office. Can I talk to the providers about these things that we're doing to support their patients in the treatment algorithm, yada, 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 right? Very anti-industry as a generalization. In a highly virtual world, there's no geographical benefit to me being Omaha versus the other person being in Omaha to call in Omaha docs. I can be in Omaha and call in Boston doctors virtually because it's a click away. So how do you get the HCP to open the email, to accept the calendar invite, to turn on the webcam and build that relationship like we used to do when we could just drive into a territory, go into an institution, talk to a provider, build rapport, have the chit chat, have the benefits of the physical presence. To me, it's like, how do we build advantage? And I think it's really about using these platforms to build network that can go with you no matter what the market condition, no matter whether your company changes or what brand that you represent that day.
No, absolutely. And, again, first principles, I think, are really important, especially when you change channels, when you do new things. But the first principles don't change. So like as a salesperson, you're not selling the product. What you're trying to sell is that first meeting, right? They always say that, like, sell the first meeting. Well, why would somebody buy into a first meeting? The product is the reason why you meet, but it's not the reason why they set the meeting. The salesperson is technically the product of the reason why that physician is going to buy into that meeting, which is why, and again, anecdotally tested this with myself, but I also tested this with salespeople. When I change companies, it's a lot easier for me to get a meeting with a doctor because they're bought into the product that is me. And like, yeah, they respect my opinion on certain things. They, even some of them just find me interesting because they like my content. They're like, yeah, I'll take a meeting about whatever this product is just to interact with this guy. Right. And I think that that's something that they have to keep in mind, because at the end of the day, as a salesperson, sales, if you want to get historical, 30, 40 years ago when marketing became a thing, I think Peter Drucker looked at, I don't know, it was Ford, the Ford company, and said like, okay, you can't, I think Henry Ford, he literally had like 2,000 direct reports, and Peter Drucker was like, okay, that model doesn't work anymore. Like there's like systems in this. So then marketing became like a thing. And when marketing got a budget, sales just became like order processing. Right. And then for the next 2-3 decades, it was like, well, sales is not just processing order because you need people to sell. Well, now with the advent of digital, right, if you have really, really good marketing, you technically don't need sales. So as an example, if we look at the world of demand gen, both you and I are frequent Chris Walker and Refine Labs Demand Gen Live, right? Which, funny enough, Chris is actually from the medical device world. And I was talking to him on LinkedIn the other day. I was like, look, you're the smart one and left med device. I'm still here fighting the good fight. But Demand Gen, Refine Labs, for those who are listening, Refine Labs is like one of the top demand generation agencies. It's essentially, marketing, but it's about generating demand, right? If you look at Refine Labs, so they have, I don't know how many, like 30, 40, 50 SaaS companies that are clients. Okay. So Refine Labs has like 70 or 80 people on payroll. You know how many salespeople that they have, Frank? Just throw a number out there.
10.
They have 0. They don't have a single salesperson. Okay. 0.
Okay.
And the reason why is that Refine Labs has done such a good job of marketing, of creating demand, right? So that when somebody like me, prior when I was working, let's say a head of marketing, wants to meet with Refined Labs, I am not interested to talk to a SDR, a sales development rep, nor an account executive who's just going to try and push a sale on me, which is part of the process. You need that to happen. You know, it's a lot more valuable when I speak to someone who's a head or director of demand generation at Refined Labs. So it's technically I'm having a peer-to-peer and I'm being sold, but it's a peer-to-peer. I think it's the same thing in our world, where that doesn't mean that we need to hire ex physicians or nurses and everything to sell. But the more that person starts being viewed as a peer by the physician, then that meeting is bought into because the physician stands to learn something.
Yeah, I was talking to, so I have a very close friend of mine who's a physician that I've known for 20 years now. And he's very industry friendly. He loves interacting with salespeople of all sorts and all the field people. But that being said, he does work for an academic institution, and they've got a lot of restrictions around things. So his interactions are now purely virtual. And when you say that peer-to-peer thing, it just reminded me of what he was telling me the other day. I said, tell me about, like, how often are you interacting with folks from different companies? Fill in the name. And he's like, yeah, kind of like as needed, what have you. But I really have just decided, I'm going to just interact with one person from the company. I can't. All right, it's just as hypothetical. He didn't say Amgen, but just pretend it's Amgen because we're a big company. Like, I can't interact with 15 people at Amgen. It's just not going to happen. They may ask for the time, but I can't get out like one person. I'm like, oh, so how do you choose? And he said, I go to medical affairs. I'm like, why? Like, why medical affairs? Like, they're not going to have all of like the sales resources and the reimbursement and the yada, yada, yada. And he's like, no. It's very simple. Do I want to have some of my questions answered or all of my questions answered? And if I'm going to a salesperson, I know that I'm going to have the restriction of what they can say, what they can't say. They've got to cut it off. They've got to fill out like a medical form for an inquiry. They can't really go down that path. The medical affairs people, they'll be able to answer all my technical questions, and they'll be able to triage because there's no wall, to get me like if the reimbursement stuff, if I need samples of something, whatever, like they'll be able to figure that out for me, but at least I know I'll get all of the questions answered. And so I think it's just interesting. Like, how do we build a brand around ourselves where we create so much value that you don't have a doctor saying that about you right now? They're not taking your Zoom call or your appointment because it's like, well, you're an SDR. And so they're thinking, yeah, it's not really peer. I'm not going to get everything I need. It's not going to be influential. It's going to be, biased or whatever. Like, I'd hate to see that happen because I think for the top salespeople, they always break through. They know that value is a part of every conversation that they're a part of. And that brand presence they have with docs is just so profound. So if we don't have that because we've got a new customer, or I'm a new rep calling on doctors right now, it's like, how do you create that? How do you accelerate that? And I think you have multiple channels to kind of get that relationship and have that transaction happen.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing that I'm doing. So many people know that I have a program called the Sales Network Effects Program. If you're interested, just go to my LinkedIn and check the feature section. It's an in-depth course that not only teaches you how to sell at scale, but more importantly, how to take advantage of network effects and do what we're talking about, right? And part of that is learning how to engage physicians peer-to-peer, like on LinkedIn. So the reason why physicians are taking on to LinkedIn, if we look at the last 10 years in medicine, 10, 15 years ago, it was something like 35 to 40% of physicians were employed by a hospital. That number is somewhere around 60, 65%. It's growing every year. So more physicians, more nurses, more et cetera are being employed. When you're employed, what do? You go open a LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is no longer a place for resumes and a place to find a job. It's also a news feed. It's thought leadership. And compared to Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all these other things, LinkedIn's a much easier way because it's the only platform of all of them where if I connect with you, you automatically follow me. So I can technically boost, you can get to 1,000 followers on LinkedIn after a couple weeks. It's hard to do that on Twitter and Instagram just, by itself. So as a result of that, physicians are spending more time on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is optimizing and incentivized to bring more healthcare providers on. Plus, I'll give you an example. The Journal of Journal of Orthopedic Experience and Innovation, otherwise known as JOE, which is run by Dr. Ira Kirschenbaum. He's the head of orthopedics at Bronx Healthcare. They got a heavyweight group of surgeon peers behind them. It's a global group. You can go check out their website. Their distribution, 100% for this orthopedic journal, is just through LinkedIn. 100%. They have a weekly post that goes out called This Week in LinkedIn, where they highlight orthopedic surgeons posting on LinkedIn. Yeah. And you'll have posts, like I've seen hundreds of them now, Frank, where you see a surgeon literally taking a picture of an x-ray, showing them holding a new device, and then saying, like, did a case today with this device, blah, blah, here's what I think. And you'll see 20, 30, 40 comments, all surgeons having a discussion, and you'll see like nobody from industry engaging.
Right. Yeah.
And so this is like, this is the free money on the table. And sorry for being a little long-winded here, but where I was going with this is that a lot of salespeople, their concern is like, well, look, I don't have a clinical background. I didn't go to med school. I didn't go to nursing school, any of these things, which is fine. You don't have to be seen purely as a peer. When it comes to persuasion, people forget that the brain merges everything together. And so if you're an authority in one area, you kind of sort of are seen like that in another sense. So like, for example, if you took 100 marketers and said, hey, for your next marketing campaign, Bill Gates is going to help you, all of them would be like, oh my God, like that's gonna be awesome. But here's the thing. I guarantee I'll put like as much money as you can think of on it. Bill Gates is not going to be a good marketer. That's not what he does. But because he's been wildly successful in one area, we assume that. So as salespeople, like a lot of times the meetings that I had with physicians in the past, I had a book show for 3 years. So all I do is review books. They'll get on, we'll talk about a product, let's say medical billing, which is really complicated. But I was seen as an expert because they'll say, hey, I'm actually looking at a new book, or I know that you've read a lot of books on this topic and everything. So I'm a little bit more persuasive within that meeting, which as a result, I become more persuasive when I'm talking about medical billing to them, just because those two things blend together. So there's many ways as a salesperson where the product that is Janet, the product that is John, can be enhanced through LinkedIn. And it doesn't have to be purely what you're selling. It could be your interest in leadership, your interest in, I don't know, your kids' football games on the weekends, and like what it means to like coach kids and mentor them, whatever it is, right? But enhancing yourself as a salesperson as the product for that meeting will get you more meetings, which gets you to pack more pipeline,
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's really just simple with that social presence. Just like you want to be an active part of the community. The expert, and I'm not a doctor or what have you. I think everyone can relate to those status fears, but like we have to like get beyond them, or if we can't quite get beyond, just ignore it, because if you're making your living in this industry and you're supportive of this customer audience, of this patient audience, of the greater life science remit, then participate. And at minimum, just show your character, show your involvement, be able to project what you're interested in. Because if we still believe that there is a degree to decisions that are made, that when the base criteria are met, we then look for like, who do we trust, who do we like in some of these purchasing decisions. You want to be that person that they trust and they like, and just by propelling content. So, biopharma, I fully appreciate, is very, very heavily regulated. And things I've learned from other people in med device and med tech like yourself, Omar, is that those compliance rules are a little bit different, not a lot, but a little bit different. And biopharma feels sometimes very restrained. And to those peers of mine, I would simply say, just have a presence showing your character. You don't have to talk about your product. You don't have to hyperlink to the brand website. Just
exactly. And to that point, this is the thing, a marketer a few weeks ago made this comment, was like, "Oh, I have concerns because we're gonna like unleash salespeople." Well, for marketers listening, then your number one most valuable resource and number one most expensive resource is the sales team. Even if you just look at digital, me as a head of marketing, it is not as effective and it's more expensive for me to post and promote via my company page versus a salesperson, because a salesperson is an individual. LinkedIn's not going to reduce their reach because they have to pay more, right? But to your point, Frank, let marketing do the marketing, which is promoting the claims, promoting the technology, all those things. All a salesperson has to do is develop the relationship, which is what all salespeople love. A salesperson wants to develop a relationship, demo the product, close the deal, right? And here's the crazy thing. And like, I feel like I have to say this less because I'm afraid that, I mean, the FDA and government moves so slow. So I don't think this is going to get like a law behind it. But I keep telling people, we're all regulated by the Sunshine Act and Stark Law. We cannot buy a doctor a dinner without like reporting it. We can't send them a present. We can't do any of these things, which, by the way, are not persuasive. It means nothing anymore. But you know, it's a lot more persuasive, and it's not regulated by any of these things. Going and engaging with physicians' posts, commenting on their content, resharing it. Let's just say I was here, a salesperson says, "Hey, you know what? My doctor's on LinkedIn, but they never post and they don't engage with anything, but they're on there." All right. All you got to do is find an article that doctor was featured in, find a publication they did, screenshot the publication, read it, go post it on LinkedIn, be like, "Great publication by so-and-so." Tag those people. Don't even say anything. Just be like, "This is a great publication. I think everybody should read it. Here's the link. Here's a screenshot of it. So it's an image." That's it. This is what salespeople need to start doing. And the beauty about this, I'm sure it's the same thing in biotech as well. But med device, it like as hard as I am on the industry, Frank, this is the hardest job because you are selling to the most sophisticated, skeptical customer on planet Earth. I challenge anybody in any industry, go find me a more skeptical, educated, sophisticated customer. There is none, right? But there's a physical demand of like, you're constantly traveling, you're on the road, you're covering these, you're away from your family. You can sell in a 10x more effective way without leaving your home in a way that your customer actually wants to be engaged with. You know?
Yeah. I mean, most companies that we could work for have some degree of a corporate communications group. I mean, I think about the last pharma company that I worked at. You know, we had 6 very, very talented people in corporate communications. You know, they worked, you know, I would say in concert with marketing, but they were not trying to market the brands. They were marketing the company and the company's commitment to different patient audiences, various physician associations, grassroots initiatives around certain disease states, what have you. So 6 people, super talented. Let's pretend that, you know, fully baked, those cost $250,000 a year each. So you got, you know, well, almost $1.5 million worth of people and, you know, modest budget around them to do stuff. And you know, you look at these company sites and they're posting stuff on LinkedIn. So if you need a beginner's action with the social media presence, just like your own company's content, don't do anything else.
Yeah, at the very least. At the very least.
Yeah, they'll see that you like the content, and then maybe not only are you being remembered, you know, the whole primacy recency thing. So they saw something from you, and then you're trying to get an appointment with them the next day, whatever it may be. But you're helping your company, to your point about the company reach versus the individual reach. You're helping to get this point of view, this message that your company is trying to portray to the marketplace to the best audience possible. So, you know, to me, it's just like, it's so worth doing, and it's helpful, and it's a part of those subtle things that I think build momentum. Sometimes I think as an industry, at least in the biopharma side, we're looking for that one big thing with all the metrics that say, yes, that was a return, that was a beneficial investment, that thing worked. It's really, in this day and age, we don't have an information finding problem. We have an information filtering problem. And so, you're helping, in the overload of information that your audience has with all this stuff that they're getting on these different social channels. You may help them filter and start finding like, yeah, they keep on liking their company's content. Wow, Biogen really has a big commitment to the Alzheimer's community. I like that. I didn't know that otherwise. Versus, because they're not reading the email blast that Biogen sent out or whatever. So again, hypothetical example, but
No,
interesting stuff.
no, absolutely, absolutely. And the biggest thing, and again, I'm trying not to like complain about the industry, but like I just can't help it, is that we understand how difficult and complicated it is to sell medical technology, right? We get that. And there are all kinds of excuses as to why a sale doesn't happen overnight, why marketing happens. But when it comes to social, it's like people want things to happen, like immediately,
Right.
And when they don't, it's like, oh well, this doesn't work, it's not going to work this way. And I always tell people, I'm like, it's not that the platform sucks; it's that you suck. You suck at doing this. Just like, and it's just like anything else in life. It's just like, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
Right.
You know? But I think like the one thing I want to see from the industry is just that they have to change. Look, like they have to change. And just to kind of get, this is sort of a side topic. The conference I mentioned, the Life Science Intelligence Conference that's happening in a couple weeks, LSI 2022. The other panel that I'm on is with Henry Peck, because we are doing the first NFT Web3 project. Well, it's an NFT project. It's not exactly Web3, but for MedTech, specifically for salespeople. And so in this talk, it's called he came up with this great name. It's like something like Web3, NFTs, and decentralized science. The most important thing you don't understand, right? And the reason, part of the theme of that talk is that this industry, when I say this, healthcare, medtech, biotech, pharma, has been so behind on all kinds of things and constantly having to play catch up. We cannot afford to do that anymore. We've gotten away with it in like being behind on digital marketing. We've gotten behind on, like selling digitally, all these different things. But we have SaaS and tech and these other industries now moving into healthcare because they've eaten everything else up. They look at healthcare as like what 19 to 20% of our GDP and like, hey, let's go into that. Mm-hmm. We can't afford to do this anymore. So like on the Web3 and NFT side, it's like you don't have to go and invest in that immediately as a company. You have to start understanding it. And it's the same thing with this digital stuff, which is, selling and marketing digitally. This is what the customer wants. My generation, which is I'm an older millennial, so I'm 35. Most physicians who are my age, they're going to be in the C-suite in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
This is how they learn. This is how they buy things. This is everything. And not just me. I mean, look, I was going to pull up this comment earlier. So Mazen, who's a general surgeon, even says like, yes, doctors want to learn more about technology online, not interrupting us at work.
Yeah.
Frank, you and I both we both own our own businesses. We get spammed and pitched all the time online. How pissed off would you be if even once a day your doorbell rings and there's somebody there trying to sell you like automation software for your company? How pissed off would you be?
Yeah. Talk about changing the address every month to just run away from it. Yeah.
Average. And I'm going to do a study on this, but I just anecdotally, I would check or ask sales reps to ask their office manager of a doctor's office, like how many salespeople show up every day in person? On average, the number ranges from anywhere from 15 to 20 to 25 people a day. Because it's not just med device and pharma. You're talking about accounting software people, legal people, marketing, all those things that are trying to sell a service to the doctor's office. They're all doing that. Yeah. So it doesn't matter how great you are. You're being bucketed with everybody else as worthless, waste of time, interrupting me in the middle of my day. I don't care what you like. I could show up to a doctor's office literally with $1 million check and I'm going to get kicked out. They don't care what you're selling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we got to think beyond ourselves sometimes. And I've been through 10 million data presentations, inside these different biopharma companies where we'll benchmark against a target audience and like, okay, so how often do they recall seeing our reps? How often do they see our competitors' reps? But we're missing the point. Like the entirety of that HCP's day is a barrage of all sorts of commercial interests that want their time. So it's not me against the other. It's like, so how do you create a customer experience that really stands out when there's so much competition for that time? And I think the social thing is interesting. In preparation for this, Omar, there were a couple other stats I wanted to make sure that we dropped.
Oh yeah, go for it, please dive in. Frank, sorry to interrupt you real quick. Just for the audience who's watching, we'll go over the hour just a little bit. But if you have a question, you have a comment, like throw it up. I'm going to highlight it. So please don't hold back. So I think a lot of people are just they don't know that they can ask. You can ask questions. I'll highlight the question. If you leave a good comment, I'll highlight it too. So anyway, Frank, go ahead.
Yeah, well, and if they've got comments, if they've got questions around this, I think it's really interesting. So, I want to over-index on LinkedIn, but a couple quick LinkedIn things around like I've heard people say, yeah, but doctors aren't on LinkedIn, and I'm like, really? Are you sure about that? So I did a search on LinkedIn just for the U.S. just to do it real quick, if surgeon is in the title, okay, of the individual, I got back. So United States surgeon in the title. That's it. 53,000 names came up. So I went over to Statistica and like, how many surgeons are in the U.S.? 53,000.
Yep.
I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. So what if they have physician or surgeon in title and it came back with 340,000? It's like your customers are on LinkedIn. So like, why not have an additional communication channel? You already have, their office that you try to show up at. You already have the virtual detailing, the virtual sales call, the Zoom call, whatever. Like, why not own these other communication channels as well? And then as far as like, are they participating on other platforms that are social? So are they influenced by it? Do they like it? The market research comes back that a lot of providers, regardless of specialty, want to consume more information, snack sized, online on these different forums. And you've got some kind of ring fenced social communities like Sermo and Doximity. And I'm like, I wonder what their numbers are, because going back to like, oh, docs aren't on social. I know that they aren't. I'm like, really? Okay, well, they're on LinkedIn, but they're also on these other platforms. So Sermo says worldwide, they've got over 1 million triple verified healthcare professionals on their platform, which is very social in nature. And then you've got Doximity, which is a slightly different use case, but there's a social-esque, element to it where they're finding and connecting with others around information. And Doximity's got 1.8 million medical professionals on that. And are they active? Are they being exposed to information on those platforms? Well, Doximity's going through the roof. Their revenue in 2020 was 116 million. They project 338 million this year. So like the attention, watching the money, like you talked about earlier, like watching the money is because people are watching where the attention is, and people, they have attention, they're being influenced. Folks want to go ahead and go there. But I do feel there's an opportunity to differentiate by engaging with your community on these social channels to be able to sell better and understand better as well.
No, absolutely. And actually, because I have it as one of my talks, I'm just pulling up. I have the actual number of how many healthcare providers on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. Let me see. Give me 1 second. So as of the publication of LinkedIn's own report, there's about 6 million healthcare providers on LinkedIn. And for my own data, because I did a similar search to you, because again, so every week I do a webinar on, LinkedIn strategy but I have to prove a point. It can't be just my opinion. So I went and did a search on how many practicing orthopedic surgeons there are in the United States. Okay. So the best number that I found was from Definitive Healthcare. They have great databases. They had 30,500 practicing orthopedic surgeons as of 2020. We're in 2022. So we can assume that number has gone up because people graduate, et cetera. When I look on LinkedIn and I search orthopedic surgeon, in the title in the United States, it's 31,000. And here's the interesting part. Pareto's principle is everywhere. The 80-20, that 20% is going to of the whole is going to be 80% of the yield, right? So of those 31,000 physicians, and this is LinkedIn's data, not mine, of the 31,000, 2,000 of them actively posted in the last 30 days. That does not count the surgeons who are on LinkedIn who like, comment, and reshare content. Okay. When I looked at vascular surgeons, vascular is a much smaller specialty. There's, I think, 4,000 of them in the United States. 2,000 of them are on LinkedIn. 1,000 of them had posts in the last 30 days. Here's the biggest thing, and take healthcare out of it, take med. This is my advice to everybody, no matter what industry you're in. If I told you, Frank, if we went back in time, and let's say it's 2007, and I tell you, like, hey, Frank, this company called YouTube, who just got acquired by Google, just open a video channel, just open and just post, you don't even have to put a lot of videos, just open it from now. Like, I wish somebody told me that, like back then.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is YouTube in 2007, because right now, per LinkedIn's data, there's 750 million users on LinkedIn today. To put that in perspective, Instagram has 1 billion, okay, or 1.2 billion, okay? Of the 750 million users globally, only 3 million of them make content. So about 1% of all of LinkedIn's users makes content for the 99% of everybody else, which means there's this huge opportunity. Forget about just LinkedIn. Within your own industry, you don't even have to be the best. You just have to be the one who shows up and does it on a consistent basis. And you get to become that LinkedIn influencer, which this is going to turn into money. There's a reason why doctors are trying to launch their own podcast and blogs and everything. Where attention is, money and influence and power goes.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I feel like with sales, marketing, medical affairs, field folks that have these customer audiences that are a part of their work life, to build those connections and to build that audience, whether they flip the switch with creating their own content or really engaging, like we're suggesting. So if they're just like, well, maybe I'll just grow the community and I'll get to the content strategy at some point as my own personal brand. I'm like, start immediately, do it now, because we all will be living in a world, if we don't have organic reach, if we don't have those that organic following, where we're going to be in a world where we have to auction for that attention. And do you want to auction for that attention? You want to auction to have people see your post? If you think of yourself as a brand, it's like, is that where you want to be? Or do you want to, like, just slowly incrementally go from wherever you are today in connections to 2x in a year, just by that slow, building of that community? And when you're ready, or you need to communicate with them, or they unsubscribe from you for that, that sales interaction, you're emailing like, hey doc, can I have a sales call with you? Unsubscribe, don't email me again. Because they don't know it's you for some reason. They're just so sick of those 500 emails they get a day from all those other companies listening.
Yeah.
You hit them up and like, hey, look, I hope everything is all right, Dr. Khatib. Just want to, see if we can go ahead and connect. You've got that additional communication channel. So imagine when you flip the switch with content strategy, because I think the savvy companies, to your point about where LinkedIn is today versus where it will be, I believe, at least in biopharma, that corporate communications will become one of the most important departments when it comes to the commercial interface of the organization, because they're going to have to put out content on, like, why should you trust any product that comes from our company? And it's because we believe in these patients, we believe in this community, all the other stuff like that. And they're going to be pushing out content, and they will be leveraging their sales forces and their field-based teams to help distribute that content, not by making claims, but just finding ways to engage with it so it propels out into that community. To me, that's where orders of magnitude of great things happen. So you take a company like Bristol Myers Squibb. I think that they've got like, I have to go back and check the numbers, but just like someone on LinkedIn, after we're done, Like, go find a company. How many followers do they have? How many employees do they have? And can you imagine if each one of their employees liked one post that came from corporate comms on their corporate company page, what the reach would be? So
Yeah,
not
oh,
just
100%.
not just the 10,000 company followers, but your 30,000 followers, my 15,000 followers, we like, and just think how massively it grows. And that opportunity is coming to savvy companies that decide to empower their field teams to strategically build these business communities on platforms like LinkedIn. And to me, just not only will be effective because it's engaged content from trusted connections, which has way more relevance than a promoted post. But imagine the efficiencies in your marketing reach with a message when you do that. I think it's the future.
100%. And I mean, as we wrap up, I know we're a little bit over time, but like we'll kind of have some closing thoughts. But maybe this is the next one. We did the state of sales. We should do the state of marketing. But I absolutely agree, and I think what marketing needs to do is think about the sales cycle and the pipeline velocity. So if it takes 6 weeks on average to close a deal, what does marketing have to do for sales to make that 6 weeks 3 weeks? And it could be something as simple. And again, I did this at Potrero, and the reason why somebody made this comment the other day to me, they're like, yeah, why is it that in med device and biotech, like sales and marketing really hate each other? I mean, you're used to that in most industries, but it's really like that in this industry. And I told them, I said, the reason why is because most marketers suck in this industry and they never sold. So they're product management first, sales second. And then most salespeople don't understand how marketing works because they've never experienced good marketing in their life. And so that's what causes the friction. But I think the marketing department of the future, right, creates air cover and awareness of the product. So when a salesperson engages with physicians, et cetera, the physician learns about the company, but then they're tagged, they start seeing this product pop up, right? Mm-hmm. And then on a weekly basis, monthly basis, marketing has a either develops new content or has a reservoir that salespeople can go to and says, hey, if you're going to talk about the company or product, here's the approved post. You copy paste this with the hashtags. Here's the image. Here's the video. This is what you use. Here's your arsenal. Go out and do it. Because I'll tell you what, as a marketer, if someone told me I had to hit a revenue goal for a quarter, and I had two choices, either I have to do all the marketing through a company page and I have a budget, or I get 5 salespeople who are going to post whatever I tell them to, I go with the 5 salespeople all day, every day.
Yeah.
More trust, better reach, better conversions.
Yep.
No,
I'm with you 100%.
So Frank, as we kind of close out, and I appreciate you spending some time with us. Any closing thoughts for the audience? And of course, I'll plug you guys in. But for those who are interested, follow Frank Dolan on LinkedIn and also Arsenal Advisors. You can also find them on Twitter. And are you guys on Instagram? I think you guys are on Instagram.
Yeah, we are. We don't do a lot on Instagram, to be honest, but there's an area of improvement for everyone, especially me. So,
so yeah, but well, we only have so much time. I mean, look, I'm not on TikTok, never going to be, by the way. But yeah, just closing thoughts from your end, Frank.
Well, first of all, I mean, it's a pleasure to always have some fun with you, Omar. We this could go 5 hours if people didn't reel us in. I mean, I just could talk to you all day long about this stuff. I think it's a lot of fun. No, I appreciate just being able to chat about this. And I would just, with all the tumult that's going on in the marketplace, when I think about the state of med tech, but certainly more biotech, where I have comfort, is that if we believe these industries are in a position where winter may be coming, to do things to help be effective in your current role, but also to be your own franchise, and this building a moat around your relationships and your connections, to your community, leveraging a platform like LinkedIn, but also having a digital competency, I think is super powerful. It's important. And I think that if you saw if you're in the United States and you saw President Biden talk last night, he made again a very strong point about negotiating drug pricing or what have you. So if whatever part of life science that you're in, the Medicare negotiated drug pricing thing could affect you because you're in the stream somewhere, whether you're on the river's edge or right in the middle. Think about what that can do to create tumult in your company. And if there's tumult in your company, it could be tumult in your career. So what can you do to build a moat around your brand, and especially if your brand is yourself? I think it's very, very powerful. And I think you emphasized it great today, Omar, is like, there's such an opportunity to have very, very strong impact, whether you measure the number of connections that you build because you're engaging with your community, or the reach that you have with some sort of message that you propel forward. It's huge because hardly anyone else is doing that. So it's like, if you could choose to do anything, if I live in the Boston burbs, if I want to go downtown, but I could travel at any point in time, would I choose to go during rush hour or when there's no traffic? And right now, there's no traffic between here and downtown. Organic reach, big time following with some of these techniques. And I think what you're teaching people around strategic selling skills as well, Omar, I think is fantastic. So I've been progressing through your course, and there's a lot of things that you're teaching me on that I hope other people will get exposed to as well.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the kind words, Frank. Well, this has been a lot of fun. We're gonna do this again probably like really soon because I enjoyed it myself. So thank you all for listening. This has been another episode of The State of MedTech. If you're not following us already, please give us a follow on YouTube. We have a lot of great content there. Check out our podcast. If you're on Apple, leave us a 5-star review. Write a review as well. That helps the podcast reach more people. And we will see you next time. Bye for now.